Now, Alex, in today's world of rush to electrification,
Mhm.
this is, I think, one of the most important studies we've seen over the last several years, and hopefully will be impactful going forward in terms of electrification versus the renewable diesel and other alternatives on this.
Absolutely. I'm a big environmentalist. I'm an outdoorsman, and so environmental impacts are a big issue for me personally. But as an industry, we want to make sure that what we're doing is actually going to have the best impact. And right now, the battery technology has a number of issues that make other technologies comparatively actually better. And this is where renewable diesel really comes in. Um, this is this is a report that we did here at ATRI just earlier this year, spring of 24, really focusing on an alternative technology and what it would look like to have a more technology agnostic approach to decarbonization in the supply chain. So, battery electric vehicles, we've done research on this before. The expense is pretty significant, and the operational factors are also a concern. So, just a quick review of some of that. One of the biggest factors here is that in order to drive as far as commercial trucks need to be able to do, a battery has to be pretty darn hefty. I mean, we're talking about many thousands of pounds. And the farther you want to go, the heavier the battery has to be. Well, that means you're losing out on revenue weight, on actual cargo in the truck. And so that is a real issue that we're facing right now with the current state of battery technology. Now, I have no doubt that batteries will continue to get better. They will probably get lighter. They will be able to go longer. But this right now is a huge conundrum, and it will continue to be one for many years into the future. That's on the battery technology side, on the truck side. On the infrastructure side, similarly, we have a number of big challenges that right that it's not that we can't do it, but it's that the size of the hurdle is quite high. So we've got, 250 million cars and light duty trucks in this country. To power all of those, we would need an additional trillion kilowatt hours. It's about 26% of our current electricity consumption. We've got a little over 12 million medium and heavy duty trucks. So that would be another half trillion, 500 billion kilowatt hours, which is about 14% of our current electric grid. So 1.5 trillion additional kilowatt hours overall to electrify all of that, about 40% of our current consumption. And look, we've seen US electricity production grow by leaps and bounds at times in the past. Um, the inception of air conditioning, for example, was a time where we saw energy output really skyrocket in the US, but that doesn't happen overnight. And it doesn't happen easily, especially if we want that electricity to be clean, right? It'd be one thing to just bring on a bunch of coal plants, but it takes a bit longer to bring on the clean electricity that you actually need in order to make the battery worthwhile, right? Powering a battery with electricity that's been produced with a fossil fuel, it's just passing around the bag. So, um,
Particularly now that we have the competition for the servers with the demand for electricity as it is. I can't quite see it, Alex, but I can almost see 3 Mile Island. And Microsoft's putting $1 billion into bringing that back online just for server
yeah.
electricity. So,
Yeah, everyone wants a piece of the electric grid pie.
yeah,
Certainly the various so-called AI uses use a lot of power. And again, electricity consumption, it's not that we can't do it, but it's that there's expense. And so we have to really think about what our priorities are as a country. What areas are the biggest priority, but also what give us the biggest proverbial bang for our buck. If we're going to be putting batteries in vehicles, where does it actually make the most sense? Where can we actually see the best reductions? And, Class 8 heavy duty over the road, right now, that is one of the areas that makes less sense compared to some of these other applications. So renewable diesel is one of the areas that really steps in as an alternative here. So renewable diesel is chemically identical to petroleum diesel. That means it is different from biodiesel. You may have heard about biodiesel. The names are so close together, but unfortunately they're very different. Biodiesel is chemically separate. It's distinct from petroleum diesel. Renewable diesel is chemically identical, so it can be mixed into petroleum diesel, used by itself, dropped in, same trucks, same engines, same system. It will not cause the kind of damage that biodiesel can over time. Renewable diesel is made from many of the same feedstocks, though, used cooking oil, soybean, corn, tallow, and other animal byproducts. So it is not a fossil fuel, but it does involve, of course, in those feedstocks some emissions. So it's not 100% emission free, but it is not itself a fossil fuel. So you can see here how that compares across some other technologies for decarbonization.
And I think this is the greatest visualization of laying these all out across the board, Alex.
It really
Yeah.
is. It really is. On the far left, you see the current generation internal combustion diesel powered engine, which is to say petroleum diesel. And that's the lifetime emissions, assuming a lifetime of a million miles. So you can see there it comes at about 3 and 3/4 billion pounds of CO2. Now, all of these other bars are other technologies, and you can see how they compare in their lifetime emissions. So the first is battery electric vehicles. Now, that's 70% of the current generation ICE petroleum diesel engine. So that is a reduction, but it's a lot less, I think, than what a lot of folks realize,
Mhm.
right? That
Yeah.
it's 70%, so about 30% less, but you still see a fair bit there. And part of that is you can see the blue color in that bar is emissions from the production of the vehicle, actually making that battery, getting those metals out of the ground. The orange is the energy consumed in actual use. Now, part of the reason why it's at 70% and not lower is because the electric grid right now still uses a lot of fossil fuels. So if you skip ahead, you can see that BEV 2050. That's what we anticipate based on current projections of the electricity grid getting greener. Battery electric trucks would look like in the year 2050.
So
So
a quarter of a century from now, that's still only as far as we'll come based on our projection on it.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. A quarter of a century from now, current projections, it would be about half. But again, that's still 50%. So, and again, part of that is the production of that battery as well. But, electricity is still going to involve some fossil fuels. Now, we've also got a fuel cell electric vehicle there. Those again are not ready for widespread deployment yet, but it's somewhere in between where we expect battery will be versus where it is currently. But you'll see renewable diesel there is towards the right, and that is at about 33% of the current emissions of a petroleum diesel truck, and that's immediate, right? That is, if you put renewable diesel in your truck right now, that is your emission reduction right now. Uh, Now, of course, we're not yet at the level of output for renewable diesel. They still need more of the facilities involved to actually create that product. As use continues to grow, sourcing feedstock will be important. So, it's not like tomorrow we can switch over all of our trucks to renewable diesel. This is also a new technology that will continue to grow, and that will continue to have improvements as well, much like any technology will. But the fact that it already gets us down that far is pretty significant and pretty exciting, frankly.
Absolutely.
Now, It is not without cost. One of the factors is that in order to actually produce renewable diesel, that still does, it costs more right now than the process of producing diesel, petroleum diesel. Um, but we can actually quantify that cost. So California right now, they've got a $2 a gallon subsidy for renewable diesel, and that brings the price to relative parity with the price of petroleum diesel. So this is a basic comparison, and you can see those battery electric vehicle numbers. Those are from a report that we did on
Mhm.
infrastructure for battery electric vehicles. If you look at the cost of changing over all of those trucks and changing over all of the infrastructure we need to actually get the electricity out to truck stops, we're talking at about $1.2 trillion in the next 15 years alone.
Yeah.
Now, if we were to power all of our trucks on renewable diesel using that $2 a gallon subsidy nationwide, we'd be looking at $200 billion over the next 15 years. So that's still a cost, right? No sugarcoating it. That's a cost as well. But it's a much lower cost that involves, a lot less total transformation of existing infrastructure systems. Again, because it is a drop-in. So that makes it a drop-in fuel not only in your truck, but also in in tanks that already exist. Um, just one last slide here, summarizing a couple of those points. Again, there aren't operational limitations with renewable diesel, right? We're not talking about going from 500 miles a day to just 250 miles a day. You don't have those range and weight challenges. You don't require new electric power plants. You don't require all those new transmission lines. Again, a lot of the places where people refuel a Class 8 truck are not the places where we currently have our electric facilities. Truck chargers are a huge expense as well. And then, of course, the truck price itself. We're talking about a couple $100,000 difference in running a renewable diesel uh, Class 8 current generation internal combustion engine versus a battery electric truck. So those are a number of the areas, again, where the costs add up, but also the operational differences add up. Um, and this isn't to say there's no place for battery electric in certain operations. Certainly, as the technology improves, it will become more useful for certain operations. But renewable diesel is something that we can cut down that footprint more already right now than even what we'd be looking at with a battery, uh, you know, 25 years from now.
Great information. Hopefully it's followed.
Certainly we hope so. It really,
Thanks.
again, it's not that it's not that there's no steps that have to be taken
Right.
to have a renewable diesel future. Certainly challenges, certainly issues that will require attention, but the promise is there in a much more direct way. The number of issues are certainly
Sure.
fewer than a lot of these other technologies currently show.
Sounds great, Alex. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is what I've got.
Let me stop the recording.
And that is what I've got.
Let me stop the recording.